Hi, welcome to the Family Table, where we have conversations that shape the way you parent.
Yeah, we are Rich and Cori Clausen, and we're excited. We have Bruce and Linda Stefanik to talk to us about values and how they apply to parenting.
Because we are in the thickets of parenting. We have 4 kids between the ages of 6, 8, 10, and 12, and we need help, and we need to do it in community. So we're hoping you're finding people to partner with, to watch these videos with, to start dialogue, because we know we can't do it alone.
We're excited to jump into this with Bruce and Linda. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us, you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
How's that for a high class?
Gestures.
Gestures right out of our closet.
We had to dig through our kids. Well, at least you bring Twister. That could have been.
It's a good way to start.
That is great. I love it. So Bruce and I, we've been married 41 years.
Wow.
4 decades.
You guys,
wow.
I think, take the cake out of any of our
Out of all of
conversations
the interviews.
Yeah.
All right. And we have 2 grown sons, and they're married, and we have wonderful daughter-in-laws. We're so blessed, and we have 1 grandson who is 6. Yep. Family's such an awesome part of what we've done through the years.
Yeah.
Great.
Just to get us started, though, let's just kind of talk about your background. Were you raised in Christian families, or kind of what's your background and what's your faith story? I think that helps frame our conversation a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our journey maybe is a little different than most. Neither one of us was raised in a Christian home, and so I was born and raised in Chicago, big city, big schools, 4,500 kids in my high school. Didn't know any Christians, never met a Christian all that time, and I left there, came out to the West Coast in my early 20s, and I was just kind of bumming around. I did some college back in the Midwest, but just needed to get out of town, and in some of those travels, we met.
We met in those travels because I was kind of searching for the meaning of life and, relationships, what is, just all those questions that you're asking when you're a young adult.
Yeah.
And without any kind of framework or reference to, faith in the picture, because like Bruce said, we were both unbelievers growing up. Had a little bit of religion, but nothing really substantial or meaningful. Didn't know who Jesus was or what that meant for us in our lives. So in the course of our meeting and just kind of to make a long story a little bit shorter, we were witnessed to by some really amazing Christian people.
Total strangers.
Total strangers.
On the street?
On the
restaurant?
street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had started hanging out together, and we ended up living together, and then we were traveling together, and we had stopped to get gas and something to eat in a little town just down the road, not too far from here in Northern California, and a total stranger just walked up to us on the street, started sharing the gospel. But a significant piece of that is a few months right before that event, my younger sister become just a total, just converted, transformed Christian.
Wow.
And she had a conversion experience, her and her husband both, and they started sharing, first Christians in our family on either side. And so started sharing the gospel with us. It didn't mean anything to me. I thought she was crazy, but her words were, "We're praying for you, we're praying for you." And then it was just a few months later, this woman crosses our path, shares the gospel.
Yeah, and then God placed us in a community with a lot of young people our age with the similar backgrounds, kind of doing, the crazy hippie life. And so many of them had gotten saved, had found Jesus the way we did. And it was a great place for us to grow in our faith, to be discipled, to be loved upon, to be included in the gospel. It was amazing.
Yeah, to do life together, basically. Because, I mean, I think it's hard to relate now because we don't see it, but we became believers in the context of a genuine revival. There were thousands, tens of thousands of people coming into the kingdom all across the country. It spread into Europe, the Jesus movement, whatever you want to call it, but it was a genuine awakening.
It was a genuine awakening.
And God was up to something very sovereign, and we got swept up in that. So most of the people that became believers with us, we were all in the same boat.
Yeah.
We all were unchurched,
Brand new
believers.
Yes, we were learning together, growing
Clumsy,
together.
crazy, but we were doing life together and having babies and raising kids. And what are you going to do here? And we would just do simple things like just sit down and read the Bible, pray and worship, and then do whatever we felt like God was telling us.
Amazing.
Maybe that's a better way to go sometimes, right?
Well, looking back, I realized,
religious background.
Again, I had no framework for right or wrong or Christian or non-Christian. It's like, I remember someone invited me to a Christian rock concert. I was like, Is that a real thing? What is that exactly? I mean, I've been to a lot of rock concerts, but a Christian rock concert? Can you do that? So we had we were blanks, Christian blanks. So.
Got it.
So then how do you go from there to then you start having kids and now you're wanting to instill some sort of a value system around a faith values, a Jesus system?
Yeah.
Well, and even at that, thinking about that too, like what Cori's getting to, where did you select your values, but what are values to you too, maybe? And is that something that you had a clear definition of or a clear picture of when you were having kids or grow into it or?
So our kids didn't come along until about 5 years into our marriage, right?
Well, so back up just a little bit.
Totally.
Our son was 2 when we felt God moving us into a direction being involved with missions.
Okay.
And so that was with the organization called Youth with a Mission, or YWAM for short. Mm-hmm. And so for me personally, that's kind of when these whole ideas of values started coming forth.
Okay.
I kind of had to learn and watch others, and then, just what does the Bible say? And I remember even going to a Focus on the Family presentation when we were new believers, because we knew we were going to be parents, and I thought, wow, that's a great way to find out what some values are, because I'm pretty green. I mean, I'm learning from the very lowest, learning curve and then moving up. So that was super helpful. That was, I think that was kind of like the beginning of this process of, okay, I want to learn what values are because I want to invest those values in our children.
What'd you discover in that? What was one of your top values that came out of that? Or some values that you were like, you know what? I started to discover this was a value to me.
The importance of investing in your child, teaching him about God and teaching him about the importance of things that are important to us, like, honesty and integrity and love and compassion and kindness. I mean, those include the fruits of the Spirit, but it also includes, what you do in community and how you help one another and serve one another and bless one another. So those are kind of what were my takeaways. And like I said, just growing and learning how to put those into practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think even a bigger question or a stepping back answer, maybe question and answer would be, what do I live for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I was a believer, before I read the Bible, or even let alone believe the Bible, I lived for myself.
Right.
That's all there was. I lived for the moment. That's all there was.
Yeah.
I lived for what felt good.
Yep.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, reading the Bible and Jesus coming into my life, all of a sudden I'm introduced to this concept, there's an eternity. And so it's a total, maybe another word would be worldview, right?
Yeah.
A shift of, wait a minute,
is.
I'm going to now make decisions not based on what I feel like, what my happiness is about. I'm making decisions based on eternity. And as I began to read the New Testament, I began to realize, these guys all have eternity in view. And so for us, it boils down to our family life was built around, let's make decisions, both little and big, in light of eternity. It sounds corny in a way because it's been so burned, but what would Jesus want us to do? What's going to matter in eternity? Even little things, buying and selling, whatever. It's
Well, even you've talked about that. One of your greatest values is.
Well, I think something that shifted my view of parenting as a whole was an issue of monetary, where there was a chance that we were looking at losing everything we'd saved just with some issues in the business. And my father-in-law actually gave me good advice. He said, hey, you lose everything, your wife and your kids are not going to leave you.
Right.
But about 5 minutes later, I actually totally felt like God prompted me, hey, but even that, who really cares if you get to heaven and your kids aren't there because you didn't expose or you didn't prioritize. Oh man, that was a
it was a
major mental shift for me.
Yeah.
That eternal perspective of parenting.
Yeah.
For us in the early days of our faith, we were just, like I say, fumbling around, just trying to understand the Bible, the basics. But as we began to read and as we began to be part of a community that was very dynamic, by the way, sharing their faith, evangelistic, sacrificing for others. We didn't have any framework to compare it to. We thought everybody lived like that. And it was a very missional community.
Yeah.
And so we were just so simple. We were like, God, what do you want us to do? Because the highest value is following Jesus, obeying God. And it was after a few years after having our first son that we felt like God spoke to us and said, I want you to go into all the world and preach the gospel, because that's what we read. We read it one day, and I'll never forget a conversation I was having with a missionary who'd been a Christian his whole life and been all over the world. We were having dinner with him in our house. And he said, well, what's God been speaking to you? We're just a few years old in the Lord, baby Christians.
Yeah.
I said, well, I feel like this verse has been stirring my heart, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, you know, Matthew there. And he said, well, what are you waiting for? And I was like,
What are we
and I'll never,
waiting for?
here's my answer I said to him. I said, well, I guess I'm kind of waiting for a word from the Lord. He said, isn't that what you just read? But in that moment,
Yeah, something clicked.
something clicked. The words came off the page and came into our heart.
Yeah.
And then we made a decision. We felt like God was saying, you're called to missions. And so then everything shifted. You know, our house, we started to make plans to move into the mission.
But in reality, probably you're not making that shift if your mindset didn't have that basis value of eternity.
Eternity.
Right. Yeah. The most valuable thing is I want to obey God because we can't lose. I mean, I may not know where it's all going to come from or how it's all going to work, but God's going to take care of us.
So along those lines, talk about the value of values. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I hate using the same word twice, but
No.
what benefit does values bring to you personally, and maybe in terms of real application in terms of parenting? Like how,
like, did you use it with your boys? Maybe when you were parenting them in a teachable moment about eternal value in
How does
maybe
it help you make
disciplinary
decisions or
whatever? Yeah.
you know, in a real kind of day-to-day
Real life
practical
situation, yeah.
situation.
Well, I could say that I think to answer your maybe one piece of the question is this idea. Values are are based on the fixed point out there somewhere. I think we've used the term true north, or values are drawn from it's this compass of what is the most important thing, and then everything else falls subservient to that. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we've talked about with our kids through the years is, hey, God says, he who honors me, I will honor. Okay, so what does it mean to honor God? So little decisions or little situations, was that honoring to God? The way you spoke to that person, what you're going to do with your money, is that honoring to God? Not in a condemning way, but God promises us, he who honors me, I will honor. So I want to live, one of our main values is, I want to live to honor God in every area of my life. I don't want my life compartmentalized. Well, this is my Christian life and this is my secular life. Yeah. Hey, kids, we want to honor God in every area of our lives. And so, whether that's conversation, how you treat your brother, how you...
Right, I was thinking of the sibling rivalry, when the boys would just, our older son, they'd pick on each other or, they would just, be mean to each other. And so it was in those moments that were the most teachable, right? You take that opportunity to say, was that loving? Was that kind? Was that, do we behave that way? Yeah. So it's having those conversations. Do we always have them? I mean, for me, did I always have them, right at that teachable moment? Not always, but I definitely wanted to look for those.
Yeah, so I bet, speaking to that, I just think about our three boys. Yeah. And our daughter, too. She gets right in the middle of the scrum sometimes, too. But to think about sitting down sometimes and talking to them while they're heated, and say, hey, was that honoring to God and to your brother?
I don't care.
I'm sure I get this giant eye roll.
Sometimes you gotta take
I'm not thinking about that, Dad.
Right, yeah. I'm thinking about my rights.
How do you practically apply that? I mean...
Well, how about the value of just saying, I value what God has done in my life. For me, I was lost. I mean, listen, I know. God brought me out of Egypt, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. I know what it was like to be in slavery, bondage to addictions and things like that in my personal life. So I value that I've been forgiven. So to pass that on to my sons, you've never been in Egypt. So you were raised in the faith. Yeah. You were raised in the promised land, so to speak. And I hope you never have to experience Egypt. I hope my grandkids don't have to experience Egypt. But so when you have an issue, man, the Bible's clear. We would talk about, if I want to be forgiven by God, I need to forgive on a horizontal level. So when they would fight, we'd go, okay, so once the dust cleared, who did what, da-da-da. Exactly. Okay, so, Do you realize what you did? Well, yeah, you know.
Yep.
Well,
Why is
no.
it wrong?
Yeah, why is it wrong? But then we would walk them through. Listen, I did this. Would you forgive me? No, you need to respond. And we tried to do that when they were young because everybody blows it. I've blown
Totally.
it. I've been forgiven at a huge level.
Yes.
But then they blow it. And so what do? I'm gonna, God, would you forgive me? And horizontally, would you forgive me? And so we tried to get the meaning of that and the importance of that and the value of that deep down inside when they were younger, not when they got older.
Well, and that kind of lends itself to how do you talk to your kids about faith, you know, and how do you, I mean, you model aspects of it. Do you enforce aspects? How do you, like, that's what we're doing, right? We're discipling our kids and we're walking, as we walk down the road, as we go to sleep, as we just move through life and ebb and flow. What does it look like? How did you guys, what were some practical ways?
Well, we had a very unique and an amazing opportunity, as we referred to, going into Youth with a Mission. And the kids were able to see firsthand what a faith in action looks like, because we would take them, you know, out on outreaches, like into the community or abroad. And so they would be able to see, like, what faith really is in action. They'd see us, you know, sharing our faith on the streets.
Or they'd be with us.
Or they'd be with us, and then, you know, they'd see us praying for others, or, you know, just blessing others in a practical manner, you know, serving food or...
People in our home.
Yeah, people in our home.
Hospitality.
Hospitality. I mean, those were the ways in which I believe our kids learned about faith. It was all kind of by being modeled to them. They saw examples of it through our lives and through the lives that we were involved with.
Yeah. You know, I would say, again, backing up a little bit, what were we trying to do? Well, as a new believer, I want to know God. Well, how do I know God? Well, I get to know God by getting to know his heart. So God has a huge heart for lost people. So we would make very deliberate plans and decisions to expose our kids to the hurting and the lost. So when we were on the mission field, we didn't do stuff and come back and get them. We just took them with us.
I was just going to say, that was another interruption. That was a key part of our kids learning about faith and seeing it in action, is we would include them. You know, we wanted them to be a part of what we were doing. We didn't want them to miss out on whatever it was we were doing. And, you know, I mean, they saw some crazy things in their young lives, but they also saw...
Our two boys have been in a lot of prisons.
They saw the power of God at work, you know, miracles and the power of God. And
I mean, looking back at it, it was like, did we actually do that stuff? I mean, when I say they've been in prisons, I'm not joking. We've ministered, we lived in Latin America. The rules are very different. The structure is very different. But we were able to take teams in and people in to minister to women's prisons, men's prisons, addiction, rehab centers. And I didn't, looking back at it now, I'm like, did we actually do that stuff? Would I do that now?
You know, wow, that was amazing. You know, that God opened that door of opportunity.
Risky stuff, crazy stuff.
It was risky. It was risky, but it was so beneficial. It was such a privilege. It was such an honor to be able to be used by God in that way.
Totally.
Yeah, so did that modeling and those activities develop an innate interest in God from the kids? Because
I think about too. Yeah, like if kids, you know how kids kind of sometimes go through this, like, I don't know if God's real, and you sometimes I think as a parent you're afraid of that, but actually that can be the best groundwork to cultivate faith. So can you talk about that for just a second?
Absolutely, right? I mean, again, faith is a muscle, right? It's like a muscle. If I don't use it, it atrophies or it just goes away. And so, we wanted them. You think about the word I used earlier, risk. We valued risk. I mean, I valued safety to some degree. I didn't want to be foolish, but we chose to move to a position where, hey, this is risky. We don't know how this is going to work out. Hey, we're driving through this area that's dangerous, or hey, we're doing this. And so they had to grapple with that too, as well. How's this going to work? Where are we going to sleep? I mean, we're in some pretty tenuous situations, but risk and faith are synonymous. That's what God values. You look in the Old Testament, hey, come take on this giant. Hey, come over the hill with me. Hey, do this, right? Go speak to Pharaoh. And so I think they had to have those. I didn't try to create them deliberately in the sense of a setup, but I wanted them to absorb that, to be exposed to that, you're going to have to feel the tension with us. We're not going to protect you in everything.
And I think that developed in them their own trust in God. And, you know, the more they saw it, you know, like, wow, God can be trusted, and God answers prayer, and God's taking care of us, and God provides. And, you know, just seeing those life issues before them causes them to believe for themselves.
Yeah. And I think risk-taking is something that is anemic in the Christian life, that I see, that we see in coming back to North America after you know, 12 or 15 years on the mission field. Our culture is so geared to avoid all risk.
And safety and
safety and insurance.
Totally.
But risk is the Christian way. Risk is right. Risk is good. And so they're, now that they're grown with their own kids, they're doing similar things. Both of their careers and so forth are very kind of, you know, they're just not your normal.
So I was thinking about that. I mean, I was thinking about, how do I ask a question about risk? Because our reality is, I mean, we talk about this all the time too. Like, we kind of design our lives to control our lives.
Or at least,
with the intent of alleviating risk.
Or even hardship or pain or suffering.
Really. So,
but then it's like, but why don't we, why aren't we willing to take foster kids? Why aren't we willing to go on a mission? You know what I mean? All of a sudden it's like, we say we value something, but why?
So you know
what I mean? Like the tension between the reality.
Yes, there's two of us. Part of me says, I want to be comfortable. Who doesn't want to be comfortable?
Right? This is comfortable right here. I like this.
But the other part of me is like, but if I don't move out of my comfort if comfort is the governing, here's a Bruceism. If comfort is the governing,
you guys must have been married a little while.
Got all these things. But if comfort is the governing value of my life, then discipleship is out the window. I'll never grow. If comfort, if my personal comfort is the thing that makes my decisions at the end of the day, I'm never going to grow in Jesus, because that's not how it works if you think about it.
So how would you suggest to, I mean, maybe us?
Hey, you know us.
Or somebody you know.
Or somebody like us.
I'm asking for a friend.
That's right.
How would you suggest
I know this guy who's married to somebody. Anyway, how would you suggest to somebody like us who, I mean, we're very risk averse when it comes to putting ourselves in a risk situation, which, you know, in a lot of ways is not good. In a lot of ways is kind of like what we're raised to be, right? But how would you suggest to us to do that? I mean, I think about the way that we take risk. We take risk in business. We're business owners. We have to move out into things. The way we do things inside the business, the way we grow our people, it's risky. It takes money, and it's not necessarily going to see a return. It's just a totally different kind of risk, though. How in the world?
How do you do faith, though? You know,
how do you do a faith risk
with your
conversation with the kids
in your life? You know,
isn't it? I just find it's fascinating that what you just said, because you do take risks, but you take risks. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, but you're willing to think and analyze and plan and strategize on how to take risks for a temporal gain, a temporal gain, which is a successful business. Nothing wrong with that, but it's temporal. Someday, it's going to go out of your hands. It's not going to take it with you. So I think the answer to your question has to do with, again, like, okay, God, so what's on your heart? What's near and dear to your heart? And when you read the Bible, just at face value, like my friend did, I see to seek and to save the lost, to care for the widow and the orphan, to reach out to the oppressed, to be involved with the things that are on God's heart. Now, the problem is, like the other conversation, is that there's a million things that vie for our attention and our loyalty. Don't do that. Do this. And days can go by, weeks can go by, months, and even years, where we've spent our time and taken all our risks on temporal kingdoms. And I just have to believe that we can get something from the heart of God if we truly are willing to do it, you know, if we're truly willing to obey. And God always works with us in baby steps, you know.
Totally.
Yeah, so one thing we talk about a lot is actually, does our schedule match our values?
Yeah, does our calendar or our money, does it match our value system?
I almost wonder if small risk for us, but maybe, like you said, flexing that muscle, small risk for us could be spending time doing something else. I mean, because in our reality is, we run every which way, always. Just with 4 kids and all this stuff. with the COVID stuff, we've slowed down a lot, but like the reality is, I don't know, maybe, are there some maybe local practical applications of that?
Yeah.
I think there's dozens of opportunities.
Yeah.
I think you could do something as simple as going down to the Union Gospel Mission saying, we're going to come help serve food on Sunday afternoon once a month. And there's always those openings. They love to have it. And you just go down as a family and again, you're in an environment that's absolutely different than anything else they're used to. But the conversations and the feelings and emotions that's going to stir. And at first, it's going to feel awkward. It always does. I mean, when we got started in missions, it was like, I don't know how this is going to work.
What are we doing here?
Our parents would ask us, "You're going to do what?" And we're like, I'm not sure.
We don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a business, and I just liquidated everything and not knowing. I mean, but isn't that the Bible? Not knowing, they followed. Not knowing where they were going, they followed. In Hebrews 11, right? So I think you can start with a lot of things. I think hospitality is an easy thing. Having people, you don't even have to leave your home. Just have someone in your home that's maybe outside of your comfort level. A single mom, a family that maybe has struggled and they are living a pretty rough life. Just have them in your home for dinner.
I know that, let me interject something.
Go
I know
ahead,
that the kids, when we were, involved with Youth with Mission, and then even in latter years too, just having people in our homes and, having those conversations, and a lot of them were, international students or foreigners, and just having that opportunity to have that interaction and dialogue with families like that. I know it was really great for our kids. I know they really enjoyed it.
Probably too in those,
they really enjoyed that.
I mean, there's an easy one. There's thousands of international students that live in the city of Salem. And when you're in another country, most of those are from countries where hospitality is a huge value. In America, we don't want people in our home unless our home is perfect and everything's clean. But that's not how the rest of the world, most of the world works. It's like, hey, come on over, we're just gonna throw more beans in the water, right? And so there's all kinds of people that would be super open to, really, you want to have me in your home for Christmas dinner or for Thanksgiving dinner or for something else or a barbecue?
And I was going to say, when you're saying have somebody over you don't even know well, have somebody over you do know well.
I
mean, in our
over.
social media age, it's a risk to have them come over. You feel like you're going to expose, like, hey, our house is messy and whatever.
Our lives are messy or whatever.
We actually talk about that a lot. We're like, we don't know if we want to clean up. It's a lot of work.
And there's
what are
back
they
to the
going to
comfort.
say?
How much is this worth?
Exactly. So as we kind of have obviously gone through values and talked a little bit, do you guys have any resources that you would recommend that are helpful, or is there just a word, anything you want to say that you could just say to us as a word on this?
My thing, maybe I'd have...
No, you go ahead.
I would say deliberate exposure is the key.
Okay.
Deliberate exposure. So when our kids, going back to when our kids were little, I would just look around and say, how do I expose my kids to the heart of God? So sometimes it was simple things like almost passive mentors. Like we would read at night. We'd read the Bible together, but then we had a whole stack of autobiographies of missionaries, of people that had done amazing things, scary things, frightful things. And we would just read and what it would do is it would stir our kids' imaginations. I think it's the parents' job. But see, that's been outsourced to a social media. But I think it's our job to stir holy imagination in our kids. So not only would we read Bible stories, like we read Bible stories to our little 6-year-old grandson, and you could hear his little mind, really? The Goliath and Daniel in the lion's den, he'd ask questions. But then read real life stories like, hey, this just happened 20 years ago in a communist country, or this just happened,
there's so many great books out there too.
So that deliberate exposure to the heart of God, but then we would, I think the other little things like we were talking about of just local opportunities, and then maybe bigger, maybe God will just move things bigger, like moving into foster care, volunteering on a regular basis, family missions trip, or family and missions. I mean, it's not God's big God. So.
Rich is like, no.
Resources, were you going to?
Oh, I just, no, I don't know. I'm blanking out.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
That's okay.
Anything, Linda, you have to say? Any last word or anything on parenting in general or marriage? Or
For us, coming into it, kind of brand new as far as like a married couple and parenting. God is just so faithful. And I'm going to start crying because His grace is really what has kept us through the years, and His just His favor, His grace, His blessings. God is faithful, and if we trust in Him and look to Him and obey Him and follow Him, He's
We can't lose.
We can't.
Yeah.
We can't. Yeah, He's a good God.
We have to make sure we have this right. My kids don't belong to me.
Yes, that's
Our
right.
kids are on loan to us. God loves our sons more than I can't pretend to love my kids more than God does. So my job as a father is to cooperate with God.
Yes,
Find
that's
out
right.
why God gave me those kids, how He designed them, and then cooperate with Him. And I think sometimes we are like, hey, God, could you help? Could you cooperate with me?
Yeah.
Because I have this great idea for my kids.
Yeah.
And God's going, no. I designed that child. In the womb, Psalm 139 says, I knit them together. So I have the blueprint, and you need to know me in order to know them. You need to know my plan in order to know my plan for them. And I think having the order is very important. We're cooperating with God.
Yes.
And that's why, as a parent, I need to have a relationship with God.
Yeah.
I need to be praying. I need to be asking
Yes.
God the questions. I need to be listening on behalf. Now, they're going to have to get their own faith. Obviously, we want to pass that torch,
Sure. Sure.
but I have to
Yeah.
be doing my part of connecting
Yeah.
with God. So,
Yeah, instruments in the Redeemer's hands. That's what we are.
yeah.
Well, thanks, you guys.
Thank you,
Thanks for
guys.
this conversation and your
Yeah.
honesty, and we so appreciate you guys and how much you've given to us. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate you as
Thank you
well.
very much.
It's a worthy goal. Yeah, it's great stuff. Thanks.
It is.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us in our first session of the Family Table, where we are looking to have conversations that shape the way that we parent.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Bruce and Linda around values and around kind of our North Star. I hope it's made you think about some things. I know it has for us. We wrestle with these things constantly.
Yeah, and honestly, this is one I feel like we could spend a lot more time on, but we have a lot more coming up. One interesting thing we have in future conversations is, while Bruce is our pastor here at Church on the Hill, we have
Probably
almost everybody else comes from other churches, so we've got some other feedback and other input coming, and it's awesome. We've got some sessions on, help me out here.
Yeah, sexuality, digital era. We've got counselors coming in, high school principals, middle school principals. We have a wide variety of expertise of parents. So we are so excited that you're joining us on this journey. We hope you get as much out of it as we know we are.
We're just excited about the sessions, selfishly, because we get a lot of good conversations.
And we have a lot to learn. Exactly.
Yes.